Hello there. The physical body is experiencing fields of entities and stuff to pose as lots of technology, having a crack at normalcy in a situation is far from normal given the global state of affairs. So, what you'd expect is for people to brush their hair and that's it, and put on a nice outfit when they go out for a cup of tea. You don't expect them to just be 2 blocks down the road and not brush their hair or their teeth. You'd probably assume that someone in this state doesn't bathe every day. They just don't brush their hair. So I like to grease lightning. Anyway, so you talk about people who let's talk about megalomaniacs. So what's the difference between a megalomaniac and a non-megalomaniac? The difference between someone with power and someone without power. So someone with power typically isn't looking for it and doesn't steal it from other people. That's genuine power. They operate on the steam of their own steam, and for as long as they're doing that, they're not looking to steal it from other people. If they want it in a bizarre situation, they might get to agree with it and try to rectify it. And so they operate what's called natural power, which it's been coded in eclectic lines to be based on respect and good karma. So respect and good karma is the most common thing that you'll find every world culture. So every culture has an idea of respect. Every culture has a lot of practices which are not respect. So world religions, for example, are not good karma. Cults and textual stuff is not good karma as well. The reason for that is because they have impressive agreements or idiomatic chains, if you will, which seem to be based on a lack of respect. So the cults that try to encourage things like thieving and mind control practices, causing confusion for people, and whatever else, those are not good karma cults. The aspects of cults that claim to generate good karma, so they call them the big 5 religions usually. They're by no means exclusive now. All the native cults in the world have big time respect doesn't. They also believe in respect. They also have, in every case, a code or two here or there which is not respectful, depending on your point of view situation. The society or a situation it is becomes a little bit difficult to discern. You sort of have to become very uncultured in a lot of different worldviews to see how ethics applies in each situation. And some people, they like to live in their ivory fucking tower and sit there and they want to use computers to do flash artificial intelligence on people so they can rip off people's ideas of Christ knows what else. They're not engaging in respect culture when they do that, okay? They're engaging in actual spying tactics. It's actually the case that for anyone to learn anything legitimate about a worldview that's not your own, you need to go and live it for a while. You actually need to live it not as that person, not as a different person, not pretending, knowing that you're an outsider to that culture, and attempting to show respect where you can, and a genuine interest in what those people have to say, and allowing them safe boundaries if you can, to continue to practice their culture without ever claiming it as your own. However, it is very easy and very possible to sort of like, if it's a welcoming culture and you feel at home there, for for whatever reason. I mean, take for example, sometimes this happens with white people in Australia. Who might interact with some Aboriginal groups, for example, or people who thought they were white but actually they're not, like this face here. It's only partly true, the white part, as it turns out. So the people that do that, okay, like there's people who don't have that story of partly white and didn't know it, but and all white and all white, and they go, you know what? The sales pitch they put on the TV was a load of fucking shit. These people are pretty cool, and they are. You know, you've got the same percentage of dickheads and nice people as any other fucking society will love and me, and the people who are nice are really nice, and so the idea there is like you'll find out with every single cultural group you come across. So have you ever worked in a trade union? Same story, exact same percentile as well. The statistics are banging. The social science statistics that say about 2% of people are fucking knob jockeys and get staffed, and the rest are all right and probably just confused, are accurate. Absolutely everything. Okay? Trade union, 10 embassy, same thing. The Sydney art scene, they're like that too. In a different life, in a past life, this body was part of that too. And you probably find that there's a lot like that. You know, the university cultures are like that too, academia's like that. 2% total fucking assholes, 98% okay. The drag scene, likewise, you get 98% nice people and you get 2% fucking assholes, and sometimes they're literal knob jockeys, but we won't go there. Anyway, okay. And that's just how it is. Every time you go to a place and you meet a new group of people, it's sort of the idea should be to just sit and observe and try and learn what they're on about. They don't have a different worldview to you. You don't understand what it is. Okay? If they start doing dickhead fucking shit and projections on you and whatever else, perhaps even fear, then you are going to need to defend, because you are dealing with a knob jockey. Okay? Excuse the language, a total dickhead. Okay? Sometimes people are doing projections on you for protective reasons. Okay, they think someone's coming after you, so they want to help out. So being able to discern when that is and isn't the case and how to deal with it accordingly is a good idea. The thing is though, is that there are cultural distinctions about whose business is what, and typically the protective role is the father's role, not really so much everyone else's. Okay, so again, this is what's really fascinating. The definition of father does change from culture to culture as well. There are cultures that define as having lots of fathers. The biological father is just one of many. Mother likewise, aunt, uncle, etc., etc. So the way that they define family distinctions is a bit different. It's non-biological and involves complex relationships and the responsibilities that go with it. So again, the cultural distinctions and use of terms mean that every culture might be using a term or two, or word or two, that is shared by a different culture but has a drastically different meaning. So it's just the same as the personal relationship terms in some cultures are different from each other. It's also the case that the technical words that were adopted by, say, some of the New Agey type groups from the scientists aren't saying what the scientists said. Okay, they're saying different things. Okay, they're inspired. They'll be inspired by this. So you got this issue too of those people going, well, they might look up the actual thing and learn a bit about it. And sometimes it sounds kind of plausible what they're saying. Nonetheless, the actual cult itself, in its various schisms, has words taken out of place. It's also the case that there's an issue, a big issue in the United States of America at the moment, associated with text reels. Okay, and text reels are a representation of that mentality, of that. Oh, the engineers, therefore they know better than everyone else. Look, they can build. They're the rocket scientists. Why don't you listen to them? Type of mentality. They can build robots and turn you into robots. So they got their biggest stickers now. Right, okay, and they think that they know everything about reality as a result of they did a computer simulation about some mathematics based on theoretical physics that they got from other types of physics, and then they want to build a computer out of it or something. And it's like that type of mechanistic systemic way of thinking, you've got to understand that the categories that they are using have their origin in the particular cultural projections of the scientists that in each step that came up with the ideas. And so although there is a lot of testing that goes on to make sure that replication is possible, it also should be understood that science is a culture in and of itself. Okay, and that culture involves the following variables. It involves a belief system, okay, which is the idea of how do you establish what a fact is or is not, what qualifies as evidence, how you ask questions, what is classified as acceptable or not acceptable methods, the expansion and contraction of methods, questions and ideology associated with that, a specific use of language to describe the issues and cultural terms to be described by the scientists, as well as a sociological environment which allows for certain types of approved and unapproved behaviour. So to say that science is not a cult or culture is crap. It meets all the criteria of a culture. When it becomes a cult in the cult sense of the term, where you've got a dear leader type mentality, okay, you've got your scientism, SCIENTISM, okay, your pulpit scientists who sit on the stage and they have 1,000 YouTube followers because they're on TEDx once, and people thought TEDx was cool because it was on the TV, okay, and they've got the word doctor in front of their name. Meanwhile, there's other people with doctorates going, yeah, whatever, or bachelor's degrees in some cases, and go, yeah, whatever, okay, that guy's full of it, okay, or they disagree because of this and that, and those people are empowered to disagree because they were trained in the language that accompanies those particular people's behaviour, and they can see it for pulpit bullshit for what it is. So sometimes you'll probably find that scientists don't necessarily agree with each other. That's the advantage of science. They don't agree with each other. It's like, well, are you sure about that? They're not supposed to agree with each other. So this is where we get this sort of like, and again, this comes from philosophy and science as well. Kuhn, Kuhn. Okay, what's called Kuhn's paradigmatic shift ideas. So, a idea is developed by the young Spriggan who's in his 20s or something like that, right? Directly challenges the orthodox opinions of their predecessors who taught them, and they're unhappy about it because they've all been in a feedback loop where that's just how it was, and that's just how the world is. And then if they go and they test it, and then it turns out the young Spriggan turned out to be telling the truth, then they go, oh, gradually one by one the older ones go, right? A bit like that, okay? And then if enough people disagree, then there's what's called a paradigmatic shift, and as the old orthodoxy starts to peel away, and the new orthodoxy, you guessed it, coming from the ideas the young Spriggan they once disagreed with, it starts to take over. So on that basis, you consider probably a sort of a natural evolution of debate, okay, and what they call the generational gaps. It's also the case that the paradigmatic shift you can see happening at the moment is between the new atheist movement associated with, we're talking textual type stuff, the new atheist movement, which is like the Richard Dawkins and stuff like that, Christopher Hitchens, people like that. They were sitting around promoting ideas about world religions that were factually inaccurate, actually, in some cases. However, did serve a genuine purpose amongst all the bigotry, to raise the question of whether or not religion's a good idea, and it did increase the what you might call the popularity of the sciences. The thing is, though, is that there is nothing about science that says that you have to be opposed to religion as a discipline. Okay, so you put about the actual scientific method, your personal opinions, okay, and beliefs are allowed to exist. You just need to acknowledge that that's what they are when you're observing a particular phenomenon or whatever, and try not to project onto that phenomenon. So you try and be a little bit like a judge almost, or a jury, where you go, don't like the look of that fella, but the evidence is clear to say. And then you have to go down, well, that's what the evidence said. So you go there. Sometimes those people, if their belief in the scientific method is more profound for them than other things, then they will accept that as a personal belief as well. Sometimes when they do so, it becomes kind of dangerous. So the movement from sort of the new atheist thing into the textual thing is an example of scientism, or pulpit science, having a form of religious fervour to it. So they're basically saying there that the engineers are gods, okay? Because, you know that, you saw the Matrix, I mean, nothing true, right? Well, sure, those guys were very happy to see that when they were studying engineering at university in the 90s, okay? You know, textual assholes. So, the theme going on there with the D-leader type mentality is that it's not really so much. You probably noticed that there's a lot of people from a lot of religions, a lot of cults, who don't run communes, who don't run political parties, who don't do anything particularly extravagant at all. Actually, they just go about their lives. They come out with their ideas. They try and help their family and friends where possible. They try to be a good person under extraordinarily difficult circumstances. They live to a grand old age, they die of old age, and that's the end of them. And those people, sometimes they're scientists, sometimes they're philosophers, and sometimes they're religious people. And they can come from every religion you can imagine. There are people in Satanism, for example, Christians out there, who engage in ethical debates about what constitutes proper Satanism and what doesn't. They actually think the ONA is a load of crap. Okay? That the ONA bears any similarity to Dark Enlightenment, aka Curtis Yarvin, is concerning. If there's any similarity between those worldviews at all, it's concerning, considering the people that did Dark Enlightenment in the USA and how that relates to textual, Palantir, what Mr. Musk has been up to, and a bunch of other stuff. It is concerning. Okay? That type of ideology and worldview that involves hyper prejudice of any kind. Okay, so when you get extreme forms of prejudice of any kind, basically you're getting a situation where those people aren't acting like scientists at all. Okay, those people, for example, who adopted Dark Enlightenment, which includes the phrase hyper-racism, for example, or the idea that rich people are smarter than poor people, have engaged in what's called a type 2 generalization error. Okay, they have actually done an unscientific thing. They have gone no-nose territory. They are not scientists when they're doing that, and that's not science, okay? A type 2 generalization error is primarily from the social sciences, so they might need an education on that one, okay? Type 2 generalization error means, well, everyone from a group is like that because they met one person who was like that. Okay, so if you meet a bully, for example, from a particular social group, you might assume that everyone from their particular demographic is exactly the same. That's a type 2 generalization error, to use the techno babble. Technically, that particular phrase refers to subsets versus the greater population as a statistical type of idea. Okay, it's used in statistics, and specifically the statistics of social science. However, it is a useful term to apply to prejudice. So, if you notice that something prejudice happened, maybe the Fugly's put a comment on their channel that says a post or something like that. They go, oh fucking type 2 generalization error. That means they've acknowledged that they've been affected by something or an idea or whatever, and they notice that they've been asking questions about what they've been saying and doing to acknowledge when they're making those mistakes. Okay, so that when they've made a type 2 generalization error as well. So it's important to do that, to check your own prejudice as well. It might not be your own prejudice, it could be reactionary and momentary, but it's still prejudice. So those people that are doing that hyper racism stuff, we've got the Curtis Yarvin crowd, okay, that there is no research in social science to support any superiority or inferiority based on race. Like, there is none whatsoever. And anyone who spent 5 minutes, or, well, actually, you need longer than 5 minutes, but anyone who spends years of their life travelling and meeting people from every race, every religion, every language group they can find, all kinds of political backgrounds and educational backgrounds, will tell you that the statistics on dickheads is true. Okay, 2% dickheads, everyone else is nice and a bit confused, and that's it. Okay, so if you, to sort of narrowly place it on this arbitrary distinction of race, it's like make men of blacks with the 4 root races. There's no 4 root races. Okay, not unless you go back before Homo sapiens sapiens more generally, and then you go, well, okay, then fine. They're talking about Homo erectus, they're talking about the Neanderthals, Red Deer cave people, and the Denisovans. That's your 4 root races, isn't it? Okay, so that's sort of, you know, it's just like, you know, that's not what they're saying, is it? So, the idea, but yeah, that far back it doesn't matter. So, like, it really doesn't. And so if there's any issue there with that, like hyper racism or whatever, they're saying, look, they want to be extreme, you know, like they're not just a little bit, a lot. Okay, and that's crap. Okay. There's a lot of groups that have assumptions or opinions about other groups without fact checking. The amount of crap that's been heard about Jews, for example, would just blow your fucking mind. It's just mind-boggling just how many of their ideas were being ripped off, taken completely out of context and turned into something it wasn't, and then made out like it was like the great worldview or something like that, and blaming Jews for it, which didn't work out. I was like, what? And then I was going, yeah. Remember, I was going, oh, yeah, then, but, yeah, well, during the medieval years, some of the European Jewry rabbis did a couple of these, right, but it was a different one, and there was no planets on it, whatever, so, yeah, so, because you don't do no astrology and divination, okay, Moses said so, okay, they're big on that Moses guy, they won't be doing that one, okay, so it's against the law, so, the idea and the interpretation and how different groups take other people's ideas out of context, that's an example of that. And there's other examples of that, okay? Like Richard Dawkins, for example, said something about Muslims, okay, which was patently untrue. There was a lot of fervour after September 11, 2001, where there was this hyper-racism and prejudice towards Muslim people, and it was completely unfair, and a lot of people commented against it and said that's completely unfair, okay? You have a couple of dickheads from Saudi Arabia or whatever, got paid off by the CIA or whatever the fuck happened, okay? They're the dickheads. It wasn't the Muslim people who were working with the Christian people and the Jewish people and the Baha'i people and whatever the fuck else in the Twin Towers that day, was it? No, they died, didn't they? And and those families still had to bury them, and those families still had to sort that out. It wasn't the fault of the people who died, was it? Who weren't flying to planes, was it? Of course it wasn't. And there was Muslim people in those towers. Okay, there was Muslim people around the street. Okay, they got crushed by that tower. Okay, people from all walks of life. You're talking about New York City. You're talking about a massive place full of a shit ton of fucking people, and they are bunched up like you would not believe, and like absolutely crowded. Like for an Australian, that place is exhausting just to look at a photo of it. Okay, living there must be tiring as anything, and that tower, when it fell down, okay, landed on people. Not just the people who were in the tower, but the bits of rubble landed on people and went city blocks that way, and it was a fucking mess. Those people didn't survive. It wasn't just the 3,000 people that were in the towers, it was the people outside of the towers. And if you're talking about a space that size, 10, 15, 20,000 people easily would have been in the area, and statistically, there's going to be Muslims amongst them, okay? There would have been people from every religion there. So the assumption that Muslims were the bad guys at September 11th, not the good guys, is, like the victims of crime, is just that. It's prejudice, an assumption. It's not based on fact. There were men who claimed to have that background who did that crime, but there was a lot of people who were victims of. You find a similar situation in any other group where you say members of one group were affected by some people who were allegedly part of the membership of their group, and then others got hurt as well. We're going to hate everyone from your group. That's completely unfair. Okay, that's completely unfair. You can't assume that all engineers and computer scientists think the world's wrong, and we all look to be living in it just because a couple of dickheads from fucking California thought that. Okay, Caltech or Harvard, where those arseholes went to. Okay, you can't assume that. Okay, scientists don't all believe that the world's a simulation. Okay, there's no simulation hypothesis. They haven't tested in the lab. They're not going to. Okay, what you've got is a situation of militaristic style mind control tactics in the context of genuine misperception of phenomena in a technology saturated environment, as well as in a context where there's a lot of doom scrolling associated with fear-based mind control tactics coming from the US media and other sources. That's probably more accurate. Okay, so the textual guys are obviously fucking assholes. Okay, there's no question about it. They're dickheads. Okay, however, just like when it comes to, MAGA, for example, or the Muslims on September 11, 2001, it needs to be pointed out that a scientist is not a new atheist movement guy, okay, and a scientist is not text real as well. What science is and what that isn't necessarily the same thing. And social scientists of the world would probably tell you if they had any sense and weren't beside dickheads like Jordan Peterson doesn't speak for everyone else, that their peculiar brand of prejudice ought to be ignored. There's no reason to believe, as for example as well, that your income status and your IQ are related. There is a lot of research to support the idea that IQ is distributed more or less evenly across all social demographics. You're going to find people with IQ of 190 who are sitting on the side of the road panhandling, and you're going to find people with IQ of 190 who are sitting in the castle drinking cognac. Okay, and all the way through. And you're also going to find people who have IQs of 80 who are sitting on the right side of the road panhandling, and you're going to have people with IQs of 80 who are sitting in castles drinking cognac as well. Donald Trump might be one of them. Okay, so that sort of dark enlightenment lie needs to be rejected. Obviously it has the moment people encounter it. I mean, are you kidding? Because people do actually meet each other and go, like, it seems so dumb, you know, like, they're not much to look at, but they're obviously not stupid. Like, take that big kid, for example, okay? He's ugly ass, and likely on purpose as well. Nonetheless, doesn't seem too fucking stupid, okay? So, if you see it from that perspective, what you're probably going to find, is that same ability to go, well, you know, the stereotypes don't match. It could occur everyone. You don't actually have to have a social science degree. The word is type 2 generalization, right? So, if you see a lot of AI videos from Elon Musk, you're seeing a guy trying to do dear cult leader status. He's a fucking dickhead. You can guarantee he's a fucking dickhead. Okay? Absolutely guaranteed. Okay? Whether or not there are other people who are dickheads as well for similar reasons, ask a question. You got to ask a question why there was a video of Bachir Cow and Joe Rogan saying that the aliens travel through AI. You got to see what kind of motives those particular individuals might have had when they said that. There's absolutely no reason to believe that they would. There's no reason to believe that artificial intelligence travels faster than the speed of light, because that's crap. It's not a useful means to transport or travel. They would then require different bodies and stuff like that than their own. It wouldn't be in their best interest. It wouldn't actually necessarily follow that they would do the intelligence gathering of exploration that they might be inclined to. See, that type of hypothesis is more suggestive that Bashir Kakau's involvement in Google and associated militaristic activities might be problematic. And so when you get those pulpit scientists and stuff like that, be very, very, very careful. There has been a pattern noticed where the scientists or people with scientific backgrounds are appearing to become more spiritual, or talking about spirituality a bit more often than they used to. It used to be like, you can't do that, they're separate type of thing. Okay, so that might reflect a general trend over time for personal engagement to involve sharing, you know, people's personal perspectives or whatever, which is okay, as long as they're acknowledging that's what it is. Sometimes it's difficult to do, let's be honest. And then it might also reflect where the New Age movement got something correct, which is called the Mass Awakening. So the Mass Awakening began in approximately January 2020. So that was a big event that involved a huge mistake that involved the USSF. It also involved a huge mistake involving artificial intelligence associated with the cyborgs division of the world military as an implant destruction, and the misperception of a drawing by someone in the Baltic state by several religious groups as well as military groups. So have fun and enjoy the multiverse and try to be nice to each other, and just remember, use your bloody common sense. That might get you somewhere.